Traditional wisdom says that working women, especially the high-powered ones, can't have it all. Today, we're talking with a woman who's got a different story to tell. Hi, Success listeners. I'm Laura Vanderkam, and I'm the author of I Know How She Does It, How Successful Women Make the Most of Their Time, and What the Most Successful People Do Before Breakfast. I'm excited to have with me real estate and business mogul Barbara Corcoran. Barbara founded and built the million-dollar empire, the Corcoran Group, and she is one of the sharks on ABC's hit TV show Shark Tank. Barbara, thanks for taking the time to chat with me.
Pleasure to be here, Laura.
So, Barbara, let's start with something I know a lot of our listeners are curious about. What set you down the entrepreneurial path?
Pretty simply, I wanted to be my own boss. I had had 22 jobs before I started my own business, and I liked every one of them and probably could have made a happy career out of any of them, but I never liked my boss. And it's not that I had 22 bad bosses. It's just I didn't like being bossed around, told what to do, what hours I should work. And so I always looked at my bosses with a smile, but in my heart I had resentment. I think I also got a chip off the old block of my dad, who was a printing press foreman his entire life and was fired from his job probably every year and a half for insubordination. So he was the walking, talking example of a guy who didn't want to have a boss. He would generally just tell the boss's son where to shove it, he would say. And he'd come home and we'd all sit around and we couldn't wait to hear his story about how he got fired. He was like a big cowboy hero when he walked into the house at 4:00 instead of 6:00 when he was due home. And so I think a reason why 9 out of 10 of his children are all in business for themselves is I think we watched him try to feed us and clothe us his whole life, and with great struggle. And he really was a guy who should have been in business with himself. He had an authority issue, and he was a very capable man, but he didn't have the option to do that with the family that he had. And so I think we made up for that. What do you think about that theory? I probably need a good shrink to confirm all this stuff.
Exactly. Well, it does sound like you got it from him. But knowing what you know now, you and all your siblings who have set down this entrepreneurial path, would you have done anything differently when you first started out?
I probably would have started out earlier. I started my business when I was 23 because I quit my job as a waitress because that boyfriend walked in and said, "You'd be great at real estate sales." And I go, "Hey, why not? I tried everything else." But I would have ignored my mother's advice 2 years earlier when I wanted to start my own business because she gave me the very good sage advice, I guess. Where she said, I'm paraphrasing her now, but something to the effect, you better build your resume or something like that. Hold a job for a while. You really need a good resume if you're going to get yourself ahead. But she was wrong. She should have said, you know what? You've quit every job you ever had from the time you were 12. You probably belong in business for yourself. But she was giving me logical advice. So I think I would have just jumped out of that situation maybe 2 years earlier. That's my only regret.
I love that.
Not even a regret. I'm just saying that because you asked me. I'm not regretful, but I had to come up with something.
Exactly. Well, not everyone wants to build a good, solid-looking resume that shows that you are stable at a job forever. So switching sort of to the business and personal sides of things, you've said in the past that you see your business and your investments as kind of an extension of your family. Mm-hmm. And I know many people think of the two sides of their lives as totally separate. The whole idea of work-life balance is that the two are on opposite sides of the scale, and when one goes up, the other's got to go down. So what's your perspective on that?
Well, I don't believe at all in work-life balance because I pursued it when I started my own family, and I was already 46 when I had my first baby. And so I had lived a very footloose and fancy-free life, just focusing on my real baby for all those years, which was the Corcoran Group. But I tried this work-life balance thing for a couple of years because I had heard about it. It didn't work for me. So what I did instead is I decided that my kids just had to be wrapped into my business. I had 1,000 kids at work that I felt the mother to, and I suddenly had one son, and then, of course, I had my daughter later. But I find that kids can learn a heck of a lot by watching their mom or dad lead other people or do their job. So I just decided I wasn't doing anything at work that I wasn't proud of, and I'd bring my kids in on it. So when we had our big February parties or our picnics in the summer times for everybody, which we had a blast at, I always tried in every way I could to have it at my home. to bring my kids in. And even now, I do a lot of public speaking around the country. And my daughter, Kate, is 10, and she has no problem at all getting up on the stage and handing out my business cards. I think that's a great asset for her. She has great confidence in a crowd. And so I just try to blend the two. I also found that once I had children, the report I got back from my many employees was that they said that having kids really softened me. Now, I didn't think I was a hard ass to begin with, but they claim that it made them relate to me more, and then I was a different person. So I think you get some benefit there. But it's this work-life balance, which is such a cool phrase, isn't it? Is like chasing the Holy Grail. I've just never been able to do it. The only piece that I do honestly make it a huge effort to divide is my cell phone. So when I go into my home at night here in the city, and I work right below my home, I have a lovely space on the street below where I live. I leave my cell phone in the elevator landing, plug it in right there, because I really don't want to take my eyes off my family life once I walk through that door at 6 o'clock. And I don't look at it again till I walk out at 8, once Kate, well, Tommy's already graduated from college, but once my younger child is off to school, I look at my cell phone, because I find it's like a rabbit hole for me. I'm very driven. I'm very neat. I like to leave things in order. And it used to be that I could not answer emails and texts before I went to sleep at night. I don't do that anymore. I realize I work my buns off until 6 o'clock, and it clicks off, and I don't see it again till the next morning. And that saves my family life. So I guess that could be work-life balance, or at least declaring war on your cell phone, right?
Well, I'm sure our listeners are going to be excited to learn that tip from you. Just turn the cell phone off. So I'm guessing that it sounds from what you're talking about that you do work probably more than 40 hours a week. And yet it sounds like you are making a lot of time for family, we talked about earlier, and friends and community. And one of the things that I've noticed in my writing is that a lot of women are worried about looking at careers that seem to require long hours because they think they won't have time for the rest of the life. So what would you say to someone who is weighing that decision?
I think it's a valid concern, an enormous concern, if you're planning on having children. I can tell you that if I had had my children earlier, I would have clearly not been able to build my business. Absolutely not. I would have had a successful business, but it would have been small. I need the hyper-focus, the 80-hour weeks, the total dedication to pull that out. And so I forestalled having a baby, and if not for the miracle of science and in vitro and 7 attempts at having a baby, I would have never been a mother. Boy, oh boy, when I think about having missed that chapter of my life or how near I came to missing it, I wouldn't have known for my own personal desire how sad that would have been, to miss out on that phenomenal show of being a parent. But I think you have to really weigh that. But I think it can also, with some women, be used as an excuse not to get started. I also have friends who planned on having a family, went into business and kind of left room for it their whole life and never had a family. Never wanted to do it on their own and never met the right person to have a family with. And so I think you have to charge at life as though you're never going to run out of time, and you put all your energy and focus on what you're about to do and then worry about that bridge when you come to it. But I think planning way in advance, I know that sounds good and stuff, but let me tell you something, life doesn't work out that way. I think you just have to go totally for what you're going for in the moment you're going for it.
Well, how wonderful that you have been able to experience both in your life now.
How lucky. Come on. I almost missed the show.
How lucky. How wonderful. So, as many of our listeners know, you are a shark on the show Shark Tank.
I pretend to be.
And you've invested in more than 30 companies, they told me, from the show. So, how do you judge which ones you want to invest in? What are your favorite kinds of companies to invest in?
I don't have a favorite kind at all. I have more food businesses than anything else, if there was one leading category. But that's not by design. It just happens that way. Usually, I'm just sitting on the set 10 hours a day trying to figure out what I don't like about the entrepreneur. Now, that might sound like a negative thing, but I'm sitting there squinting my eyes and then trying to break that habit more recently because it doesn't look good on camera. But I'm sizing up the entrepreneur to try to figure out how smart they are. Smart, I don't mean IQ-wise. I'm talking about smart on their feet, street smart savvy, good on their feet, fast thinking. because those are the kind of smarts that build businesses, not the Harvard MBA kind of intellectual observation kind of smart. And I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying these are the traits I'm looking for. I'm looking always for someone with enormous energy, because I've never met anyone who's built a business that didn't have 150% energy. And some people are born with more energy than others. And if I see that the words are right, and the plan is right, but the guy or the gal's delivering it with just average energy, they're not going to succeed in my book. I hope I'm wrong for their sake, but I'm already out. I'm just trying to fish up a plausible reason why I'm going out versus saying, I don't like your energy, which would look ridiculous. Okay. But that's the real reason I'm going out. I'm watching their eye contact. I'm watching them bob and weave when they do have the answer or don't have the answer. I'm really virtually not paying any attention to the business plan. I'm hyper-focused on the individual.
It's all about the person.
It really is, and I'll tell you why. I've been on Shark Tank 7 years already, and hopefully it will go on forever. But in those 7 years, every single person who succeeded had enormous energy, okay? And those who didn't have it, and they had the same traits, which is street smarts, common sense, high energy, and they also had the ability to come back out of failure, which everybody knows is true of anyone who wants to succeed in anything in life. But I'm watching how these entrepreneurs are taking the hit and bouncing back up, how fast they're bouncing back up. Because all of my successful companies had those 3 traits. And all of the other ones didn't, the ones that failed, okay? And so I've really learned to just look for the same MO, because it repeats itself again and again. And if you are in any doubt as to whether you're a natural born or capable entrepreneur, you should go on my website. I'm not trying to promote it, but I did this to save people aggravation. I have created a phenomenal IQ test, entrepreneur IQ test, 10 multiple choice questions, and it is accurate. I've tested against sharks, people who have succeeded in business, people who pretend they succeed, and I know personally they failed. I've had them fill it out, and I have hammered out a surefire way to let you know you're not an entrepreneur, by the way, and save yourself the time and keep your day job.
Well, that's good to know. So what is the smartest question that any of these entrepreneurs who are telling you about their businesses and introducing themselves to you on Shark Tank, what are some of the smartest questions they've asked you?
I'll tell you, there are really 2 that I'm paranoid on at this point, because they're red flags or green flags as to whether the person's going to be successful, if they're going to hit that finish line, or whether they're not. And it's, you might not even hear the difference in the questions, but I listen hard for it, okay? The great majority, like 2/3 of the people I've invested in who have failed, okay, they tried, they just didn't make it, okay? They might still think, many of them are still in business, and they think they're in business, but I know they're never going to succeed. I've lived with them many years, okay? But when someone says to me, what should I do? What should I do? Here's the situation. What should I do? It's the kiss of death. Because what that question implies explicitly says to my ear, is they're asking me what they should do with their business. I'm an investor and I'm there to help. I'm like the grandparent that supports them in any way I can. But they ask me, what should I do? No. The words I love to hear is, what would you do, Barb, if you had this? The difference there is, what would you do is someone taking responsibility for their business. They know they're in charge. They know they're going to win or fail, die on their own sword, but they're just asking me from my life experience, what would you do in this situation? Could you give me some advice? Versus, what should I do, Barbara? Oh my God. It's like, oh God, I've got myself a child. Children don't build businesses. Grown-ups do.
That is a good insight. I'm glad we got that there. So don't come to Barbara and say, what should I do? You want to be saying, what would you do?
Hey, that's all right. A lot of people do, but you can see the responsibility or lack of responsibility in that question, right? In those questions.
It does. It focuses more on what other people think as opposed to them knowing they are in charge. So
exactly. Mm-hmm.
So we're just going to end up with some rapid fire questions that Success always does with these interviews. So quick, whatever first comes to mind. If you could be one of the Disney princesses, I have a 4-year-old daughter and we are big into Disney princesses right now in my house. Which would you choose?
I would choose Prince Charming. I certainly wouldn't want to be a princess because they're never in charge. The princesses are never in charge. No, I'd much rather be Prince Charming and be in charge. I'd rather find somebody to fit my slipper than wait around and hope that my foot goes in somebody else's. No. Nah, Prince Charming for sure.
Prince Charming all the way. So what is one of the best gifts you have ever received?
I'm sure I've gotten many wonderful gifts, but only because this was recently, it just popped in my head. One of my two closest friends, Edie Salton, came to Thanksgiving. I had 32 people, more than I wanted. It's just the same people I always invited all said yes, whereas usually half say yes. And anyway, she volunteered to bring a giant turkey and stuffing. Everybody brought a piece of the meal. I set the table. I had the easiest job. But I set a beautiful table, very creatively. Anyway, Edie shows up not only with the turkey and the stuffing, but she had two women with her with work aprons on. She brought the help.
Wow.
I always serve. You want a little more wine? Would you like some cranberry? Get some more gravy. Let me help you there. But for the first time in my entire life on Thanksgiving, I actually sat down and enjoyed my company. And that's the best gift. I thought, my God, I don't think I'll ever see a gift better than this.
That is a great gift.
But that's recently, so it's in my head. I'm sure maybe I've had others, but that in my mind right now is the best gift I ever got.
And finally, Barbara, how do you define success?
I don't really know. I do know how I feel success. If I wake up in the morning, every morning in my life, or let's say I woke up this morning, I should have been tired from designing my closet last night, and I was, but I woke up and I was like filled with enthusiasm as to what the day held. And I hadn't looked at my book, so I really didn't know what it held until I got to work. But I was filled with enthusiasm and excitement about facing the day. And I think that's your most honest emotional report card in business or what you do for a living. If you're waking up, like when I was working for other people, all those jobs I had, I brought great enthusiasm and did the best I could at every job. But I always had this feeling in my stomach, oh God, I got to go to work. Oh, come on. What was I? I was like 16 and I had this feeling already. It wasn't really about that. It was really about I didn't want to really work and have somebody tell me what to do. It took me a while to realize that, right? But no, it's that feeling of waking up in the morning where you can't wait to get to work. And it's not that you don't have your bad days where you like have cash flow problems. Your key top star salesperson just went to a competitive firm, and that's the biggest F in a report card any entrepreneur could have when they lose their key people. Where you just, oh my God, how am I going to get through it? So you have your exceptional mornings where you feel that way, when everything has gone awry. But for the most part, I would say 99% of the time, if an entrepreneur is happy what they're doing like I am and always have been, you wake up really excited that you want to go to work. And that's the most honest report card of all to listen to, I believe.
Well, hopefully our listeners, if they're listening to this in their car on the way to work, they can't wait to get to work either. So that would be a great thing. Barbara, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Hey, my pleasure.
Wow. Barbara is a spitfire. She's full of great ideas to help us be more successful in both business and life. I know the first thing I'm going to do today, after hearing this interview, I'm going to schedule for myself a little cell phone free time. Barbara has declared war on her phone, leaving it out of reach immediately at the end of her workday and not touching it again until the start of work the next day. She uses the free time to focus on her family. I think I will use the time to focus on my friends. I can't remember the last time I sat down to a good meal or even just a casual conversation with a friend when neither of us pulled out our phones. When will your cell phone free time be? And what will you use it for? Now, for all those entrepreneurs listening, Barbara had some great advice to share, starting with what she looks for in an entrepreneur who appears on Shark Tank. Her list included street smarts, enormous energy, and the ability to take a hit and bounce back. Do you think you possess those qualities? There's an easy way to find out. Jump over to barbaracorcoran.com and take her entrepreneurial IQ test. And be sure to share with us how you do by posting to our social channels or emailing us at you@success.com. That's YOU@success.com. We want to know if you have what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur. All right, one final thought that Barbara shared has to do with asking the right questions. We here at Success preach the power of a good mentor and asking for help when you need it. But are you asking for help in the right way? Barbara said that when entrepreneurs ask her advice,